Welcome to the Vet S.O.S. Veteran Entrepreneur Spotlight. Remember, don't drown the sea of transition. Grab the Vet S.O.S. Lifeline. The Veteran Entrepreneur Spotlight is sponsored by SpearPoint Solutions. SpearPoint Solutions is a one-stop shop for leading-edge products, services, and training from multiple vendors. From AI training to corporate gifts and much more, they have everything you need to help you organize your organization thrive in the modern economy. Please check out all the valuable offerings at SpearPointOnline.com and remember to use the code VETSOS on anything you purchase there to help us with our mission to continue to educate the veteran population. Very excited today. We're sitting down with Theresa Carpenter, founder and host of Stories of Service podcast. She's an active duty Navy commander with 28 years of service under her belt who recently submitted retirement paperwork. Her passions include helping people succeed, leadership, protecting animals, moving past traumatic experiences, speaking up for positive change, and the professional development of the craft of public relations. As a reflective writer, she discusses the human experience for her blog, Theresa's Tapestries. She has published in several media outlets and trade press, notably The War Horse and the Public Relations Society of America. Her podcast, S.O.S., which she started in April of 2020 and now has more than 160 episodes featuring ordinary people from all walks of life who show up in service to their respective communities and are beacons of change. She's also the co-author of 2 books, Complicated Alliances, an anthology that tells the stories and struggles of women who serve in the military and those married to one who serves, and The Undercover Leader, Why Rule Breakers Make Exceptional Game Changers. She's currently the Public Affairs Officer for the Navy Seabees at Naval Construction Group 2 and lives in Ocean Springs, Mississippi. You've had an amazing career and have done so many things so far. I'm very excited to, finally sit down with you, Theresa. How are you doing today?
I'm good, Sean. Thank you so much for having me. And it's an honor to be here and be on your podcast and get into some of these discussions about veterans and what they can do with that life beyond service.
Oh, absolutely. And then, it's when we started this, I had no idea that the people and that were doing this type of thing in podcasting and that were veterans or active duty service members and everything. And wound up learning about you and your show and was very excited about that. And love listening to the content that you're putting out and the people that you're bringing forward, and the stories are just amazing. And I never thought that I'd truly have such a love of storytelling, but you really just, it becomes a part of you when you start hearing so many of these amazing stories.
It really does. And I'm very fortunate that I'm one of the few I've seen out there that can take on the hard issues that are somewhat controversial, but then also still host those people that aren't doing the controversial stuff, but more of the service oriented podcast content. Because I definitely think that both have their place and both stories deserve to be heard.
Oh, absolutely. And it definitely can be a fine balance, right? You could be a controversial podcaster if you want, and you'd probably have millions of followers because that seems to be where everybody
Right.
goes. But the power that you're bringing forward is just amazing. So typically I start with the person's transition. You were just starting this journey, so tell us like some of the feelings and thoughts and maybe some of the early things you've done as a part of your transition.
Sure. So when I was stationed in my last duty station, I took a TAPS class, and that was really helpful. I thought I might retire from that position. It did not turn out to be the case. We wanted a little bit more time to get settled in the United States. But by going to that TAPS class, I learned about everything that I needed to do to prepare to get out. Primarily, as somebody who served nearly 30 years, I knew that my medical record did not have the documentation or even the treatments that I needed. There were a lot of things while I was competing for a promotion that I thought would hurt my eligibility for the next rank. So I didn't do the things that I needed to take care of myself. I mean, everything from getting the circulation in my fingers and toes addressed to the more deep mental health problems that I had with complex trauma, PTSD, and anxiety. I didn't want to take care of any of it. And now I've been on a journey to take care of every single one of those issues. And I'm now just down to just 2 more minor medical issues that I want to address before I retire in the next year and a couple months.
Yeah, that's definitely part of the journey, right? And um,
Absolutely.
it's unfortunate that sometimes we have to put off treatments and hide treatments, if you will, because of what the future may hold for us career wise. And but God, you're getting the help and things you need now. So
Absolutely. And the medical staffs at the places where I've gone have been amazing. And I've since found out that some of these things I could have still served and done, but I just didn't even want to go down that road. I was so focused on promoting, and that's just been such a big emphasis. And now it's like I have to decide, well, what am I going to do for the rest of my life when I'm not worried about making the next rank?
yep, absolutely. All right. So what led you down the pathway to want to be an entrepreneur?
So, really, I wanted to be able to create something that was fulfilling, that I had more ownership of. I love being a part of amazing teams that do incredible work, but I felt like there was something out there that I wanted to do that I could have the autonomy to direct the course of how it would be shaped. And I didn't necessarily know that that was going to be podcasting. I did think it was going to be something in the media field, whether that be becoming a blogger or publishing a magazine. I had always looked at a lot of those kinds of things.
Mm.
But when the idea of podcasting came about, I was very intimidated by the tech aspects, and I still am to this day. But I had to just push past that because I wanted to be a storyteller, and I wanted to create something for myself that would be of value to the greater collective, but then would also give me something to focus on. I was always the kind of little girl that would want to go to the library and read and learn about all these things. And now I get to have guests on who educate not only my audience, but educate me on issues that we need to be addressing or services that they're providing. And it's just so fulfilling. Every time I have a guest on, it's like I walk away and I'm like, oh my gosh, it was worth all that work, all those promos, all the studio and the tech and everything else. It was worth it because I just had this incredible conversation.
Eh, People just don't know. You know
No.
that sometimes it can be very frustrating the build up to the event, right? And whether it's getting the material, having tech issues, whatever the case may be,
Oh
maybe
yeah.
just life interfering with your schedule. But when you wind up having a beautiful interview, a beautiful conversation, you do, it just changes everything. You're leaving going, and that's why we do this, and
Yes.
it's amazing. Um, so you talked about tech and things like that. Have you started embracing AI already?
I have. In fact, for my show notes now, here's what I do. I get the bio of the guest, and then I write a little teaser at the top, and then everything I'm doing right now, I'm putting into Chat GPT. Even my LinkedIn post, I write everything, but then I say make more compelling, and it spits it out with just a different like syntax. It changes some words around, and it keeps my tone. It keeps exactly what my intent is. And then I read it over and I go, okay, did they mess up this? Did they put this in the wrong order? It's just become such an amazing tool to help with my show notes. It helps with my day-to-day internet postings, and even my speech writing. I have to speech write sometimes for work, and so I'll put a speech in there. And I don't feel it's plagiarism. Oh, there's the tree. I don't feel it's plagiarism in the slightest because it's still using all the same words, the tone, the intent. It's no different than just having an editor look at
Yeah.
your work.
Yeah, and the thing is, you're still doing the work, right?
Right.
And that's what that you could easily just type in "write me this" and it would spit
No.
something out. But
Yeah.
you're putting in the work, you're adding it to, and then you're just beefing it up. And like you said, editing. I love that point of view on it, and I completely agree with you. Okay, so what's been the best and the worst part so far about being an entrepreneur?
So at this point, I would say I'll start with the worst and like end on a good note. But the worst part is that at this point, and as many of entrepreneurs I best can relate to, is that podcasting may never make me any money. I mean, it's really similar to being, I compare it to, it's an art. And I compare it to a musician. I compare it to a person who does acting, any of the creative arts, painting. How much money do these people a lot of times spend upfront on their craft in order to just get to a point where they can maybe make some kind of profit. And of all the veteran podcasts out there, how many of them percentage wise are actually turning a profit? I would bet it's maybe 5%, 10%, if at most. So I think you have to go into podcasting like a passion project at first, and then say to yourself, if this never makes me a dime, will I still do it? And can I still do it? Like, can it just be a side hustle if I still need to work? And so for me, that was probably the worst part about it, was just understanding that this is not going to be something that is going to make me any money. And then the tech aspects are quite difficult for me, and I don't really enjoy it. But it's nice. It's one of those things where you work on it, and when you're done with it and you have good sound, or you have great lighting, or you have a great backdrop, you're like, okay, that was worth that. Or the scheduling and the back and forths and the creating the graphics and stuff like that. But the best part is the people who agree to come on and the stories that they share. And when somebody writes me and says, oh my gosh, you just had so and so on, I absolutely love her, I love that conversation. Or you're able to engage in a dialogue about something that is really hidden and many people don't want revealed, and you're able to do it in a way that doesn't get me a nasty gram to my chain of command and doesn't get me in any trouble. And that's been such a wonderful experience, being able to coordinate with my lawyer at work, being able to coordinate with my chain of command, saying, I have this show, and you might get an email at some point, but I will be talking to Jag every step of the way. And I really do believe that it helps people feel heard, feel seen, and feel understood.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely, and I love the approach. Still being active duty and using JAG and talking to them and making sure your command was aware. And I was probably in the last year of my transition when we started the podcast, so I really wasn't talking to the command much about it at all. Not that I was overly worried about it. We don't get into controversial topics,
Right.
but the it's just great though that you had the foresight to do that and make sure that they were along for the ride the entire way. So
Right. And it's not always been easy on them. I mean, I was a hard placement for this last job. I I lost the job that I was being considered for because of my social media, and I knew going into this that this was a price I was going to pay to get the topics that I wanted to cover and to talk about the things I wanted to talk about. And so I definitely, my hat's off to the people in my detailing shop in the Navy, and to even my present chain of command. Uh, they understand that it's part of our First Amendment rights, and I'm not disparaging people. I'm not bringing discredit to my fine Navy. I'm trying my best to have a show where people can share their truth
yeah,
and their story. And if others disagree, that's great. Bring it on, because I believe that everybody has a right to their lived experiences and their perspective.
absolutely, absolutely. No, that's wonderful. All right, so have you used any programs to help you build the business? Something like a Boots to Books or not Boots to Books, Boots to Business, or any of those types of programs?
I haven't. So, one of the things that I'm very fortunate about is that I have a husband that's very business savvy. And so, he is always looking at ways to find a profit in whatever we're doing, whether it be what we resell online, or how we're being able to claim some of the things that we have for the podcast with our taxes in some small way. Um, there are different ways to become incorporated with your LLC versus being a sole proprietor. So we are looking into some of those things. Monetization is really my next feat with my show. Eh, But I'm also very conscientious of the fact that on active duty, monetization is still seen as very hit or miss in terms of selective enforcement about using the uniform. And so I don't want to violate those policies. And the work that it would take just to get the sponsors going isn't really worth it when I'm trying to focus on my transition anyway. So I've made the call not to monetize. There are many active duty who do, and there are many people who question it and say, why do they get to do it and other people are being told not to do it? on active duty. So for me, it just hasn't been worth it to go down that road, but I am definitely interested in monetizing. In fact, I even told my chief of staff I was going to put in an off-duty employment permission slip. So I still might end up doing it at some point, but I'm trying to figure out what's the right balance because I want to have those shows that do question things.
Okay, outstanding. All right, so tell us about Stories of Service podcast. What are you doing with it?
So, Stories of Service, S.O.S for short, is ordinary people who do extraordinary work. And I made it really, really broad because I wanted to be able to bring on the people that I feel have a story to share that is providing something that is of service to the greater collective, whether it be their story of how they were wronged by the system and how they fought their case, or how they are a coach and they're providing this particular service with I had somebody on the other day that teaches about plain writing and about just writing very simply to get your point across very succinctly. I've had a marketing guru. He's written 44 books and he helps you write your book. And he helps just ordinary people who have businesses and other things write a book about their legacy. And he does it in a way that's, 200 pages, very simple, to the point. He's got it down to a science, how you can design the cover, and he coaches you throughout the process. So I try to have people on that have a particular interest in what I feel the veteran community or the active duty community is currently confused over, or they need some help with. I kind of look at where the gaps are in where I see there being issues, whether it be in issues with your transition or there be issues with the criminal justice system and some of the ways that you can seek due process. I just look for those things and I listen. I listen to my community and the audience and what people are concerned about, and I try to find people and subject matter experts that talk to those issues.
Fantastic, and you do a great job with it. I mean, your product is phenomenal, and it. I don't want to say it's a fun listen. It's a, but it is. It's fun to listen to your stories, and it's just hearing all those things, and just I absolutely applaud you for what you're doing.
Well,
It
Sean,
is a wonderful product.
it's really funny because after every show, especially, I don't know why it's more with the women, I sort of have that girl talk kind of thing going on that's fun in its own
Okay.
way. But even the guys I have on, that's one of the first things they'll say. And I think it's because I'm kind of a funny person. I mean, I'm not no stand-up or anything like that, but I have a very, very my husband's really funny, and humor was always something big in my family growing up. So I try to just, I won't want to say make light, but I try to find the humor in even the darkest stories because I really do believe humor is such a powerful tool for making change because
Oh,
it humanizes all of us. I mean, I've got friends on the left, I've got friends on the right, and it's always fun. And my discussion feed, especially lately, has been lighting up in LinkedIn. And so I was like, that's a logical fallacy. That's a logical fallacy. And it's just been so much fun to try to deconstruct these arguments about very serious topics, but try to help the collective be a little bit more critical thinker and not just go to their ideological corners, but
okay.
try to see this issue in a more, nuanced way. And I find that fascinating. That's where my big nerd side comes out.
Yeah, it's fantastic, and I was a big believer from early on that if you can't laugh at yourself, then you're just going to be miserable all the time. And we definitely are at a point, I think, in this country where a lot of people take themselves way too seriously. And it's we got to get back to that middle ground and being able to have these conversations. So where's the best place for the audience to connect with you and check out your podcast?
So, LinkedIn is my biggest following. I started posting there routinely about 3 or 4 years ago, and it just kept growing. And it's also where I feel like you can have the best conversations, and I'm a conversationalist. I even am a conversationalist in comments. I mean, people are like, who has time to engage like that in the comments? Well, I enjoy it. I mean, like I said, that's my library nerd side coming out, where I really just want to dig in and figure out well, what's the truth of this? Like, well, what did they really mean by this? Or what? And I love analyzing media, public affairs officer. I love looking at the mainstream media and trying to see where the cracks are and where they didn't really go far enough in an issue or something like that. So LinkedIn is probably the best place to kind of see where I post routinely and where my podcast guests, we go live on LinkedIn, but I'm also on YouTube. I have a presence on Instagram, Facebook. I just don't post on those as much. And then I always upload all the audio versions of my live podcast to wherever you find podcasts. So if you put in S.O.S and then my name right there, my show comes right up. I'm also on Wreaths Across American Radio. They do my show every Friday night at 9 p.m. EST.
Nice. Yeah, their schedule's all over the map because I'm Thursdays at 4. I have no idea how they put their schedule together, but it's great to be on that platform.
Oh, and Parade Deck. I forgot. Sorry. Want to give Parade Deck a plug as well. I do all my blogs on Parade Deck, and it's a wonderful place, as you know, for the content creator community. So if you are a veteran content creator of any kind, not even one who has a podcast, I highly encourage you get with Andrew. He's amazing, and you get on the Parade Deck.
Yeah, I'm gonna make sure Andrew takes note of this. And we're talking about him here on the podcast. So.
Yep. His ears will be burning.
Well, Theresa, I want to thank you so much for joining us today on Vet S.O.S and sharing your entrepreneurial journey and what you're doing. Just so powerful. And on behalf of the entire Vet S.O.S family, we want to thank everyone for joining us today. And remember, you can find us on all your favorite podcast platforms, YouTube and social media. Make sure you subscribe and follow not only Vet S.O.S, but also S.O.S, so you don't miss anything that's being put out. And remember, don't drown the sea of transition. Grab the Vet S.O.S Lifeline.